Hey, everybody. Today we're going to review one element of document analysis that you would use on a DBQ or really anytime you're looking for or examining a source or a primary source or some sort of document. So remember, we use the acronym HAPPY, HAPPY, and the H is what we're going to look at today. Remember, H stands for historical context, or you could even rephrase it to historical situation. So let me jump back to the book here. So I pulled up the documents from chapter 5 of your textbook, and I'm not going to go through any one in particular, but it would be helpful for you guys on your own to take a look at some of these and in your head, or even on a piece of paper, note what the historical situation of each of these things would have been. So, the Stamp Act Congress of 1765, it's important to think, okay, 1765, what is going on in U.S. history or in the history of that we're studying North America? What's going on at that time that would impact what this document says? And so we look at 1765 and we go, well, this is even before we open the document. We say, okay, well, that's prior to the Declaration of Independence. It's prior to the War for Independence. It's prior to us becoming a country. So we know that we're going to be pre-U.S. And we should think about, well, right before the war, right before the Declaration, right before all that stuff happened, we were in an era of um, increasing distrust of the British and increasing resistance to their actions against colonists. And so that will frame how we read the document. And that is the historical situation. Now, we would also want to include some specific ideas or events in there. But the general idea is that, okay, 1765, Stamp Act Congress, we know this is an era or a time period where there's increasing tension with Great Britain. We might mention specifics like taxes. We might say something like, this is an era where the British were taxing the Americans or the colonists, and that impacted their relationship. You might even mention something like salutary neglect or any other key term or key idea that would help us understand the context or the historical situation. So I'm actually going to go over to a document from a document-based question, an example from the AP. So this question is evaluate the extent of change in U.S. foreign policy in the period 1783 to 1828. So this is a tough one, and we haven't reviewed that whole period yet, and that's okay. But 1783 should stand out to you. That would be the end of the War for Independence and the signing of the Treaty of Paris. And so it's the early kind of period of the birth of America. And so we will be looking at that. So we're going to take a look at the historical situation of that document. So first we'll read it. Won't take very long. We'll do a quick breakdown and then we'll be done. So President George Washington, Neutrality Proclamation, April 1793. So that is important that we look at that year. We may not know exactly what happened in 1793, but we have to consider the time around it, the historical situation. So Washington states, whereas it appears that a state of war exists between Austria, Prussia, Sardinia, Great Britain, and the United Netherlands of the one part, and France on the other. So all these countries versus France. And the duty and interest of the United States require that they should, with sincerity and good faith, adopt and pursue a conduct friendly and impartial toward the belligerent powers. In other words, the U.S. has to take a stance of neutrality against all these belligerent powers or these people who are in conflict. I have therefore thought fit by these presents to declare the disposition of the United States to observe the conduct aforesaid towards those powers respectively, and to exhort and warn the citizens of the U.S. carefully to avoid all acts and proceedings whatsoever which may in any manner tend to contravene such disposition. My, that's wordy. But what we know is that Washington is telling people to avoid doing anything that would contradict this stance that we are friendly and impartial, okay, to those who are fighting. So it's a proclamation of neutrality. So we read that, but all we're doing is looking for historical situation. We're not looking to explain purpose or audience or anything like that. So I look at Washington, I look at the time. I know it's post-war. It's post-war for independence. I know we are an established nation at this point. And so what my historical context would be, or my historical situation would be for this particular document, I would say something about, number one, the war for independence is over, and the US has established itself in the world as an independent country. That would be historical situation one. I would also mention that the US has, since they just fought this war, they are in a spot where they are in debt, and they are, their concern, the people's concern, is that entering another war would be very troublesome for the reason they would acquire more debt or acquire more debt, and also because they don't have the manpower necessarily to fight another war or to get involved in another war. Um, so that's the context of him saying this. I could even look further into the future here, or look into the future, and I might even mention something about George Washington's farewell address and how he warns against getting involved in alliances and foreign ordeals and that sort of thing. That would all be part of the historical situation. Okay, and so again, context and or historical situation, you can phrase that either way. That's the H in happy, and that's what you're going to work on today.